Welcome everyone to an exciting video on RAK enclosures. So this video we're going to go over all the things, benefits, we're going to have a little tour and then some tips, just kind of get all the really important stuff out of the way. If you're familiar with it, or you can figure out the assembly part yourself. But we're going to front end all that information so you can look through that right at the beginning of the video. And then of course, if you need more information, you want kind of a full guide, you can stay on for the whole show here. So let's get to it. First off, your benefits. Like, why the heck would we want to, oh, wait, but wait, there's more. Before we begin, definitely want to check the description on this video and the pinned comment, where whenever I'm wrong, and I fully admit I am wrong sometimes, that I get corrected in the comments. So a special shout out to y'all that help correct me. If I'm wrong, I correct it. I put it in the description. There are some things that I will show that are a little bit experimental in this video, and I'm going to call that out so that this is not the standard. I mean, there may not be the standard way to do it, or I'll point out what is usually the standard, and then you can deviate from there if you choose. All right, links are in the description as well. If I miss one, call it out and I'll get it added. I can say, oh, I'll put the link in, and then I might forget it. So just call me out and I'll get that one added. I'll also add a link to the live stream I did on this that will go through even Amazon links and such on the parts that I use. So you can check that out. And this is experience from probably over a half a dozen installs now using the RAK enclosure. So I didn't want to just get one of these enclosures and try it out myself and then figure it out, you know, do the video and then have 1,000 questions. So hopefully this can, while it might be a little bit longer, we'll have a lot more of the information and the wisdom that I can share from doing these installs. And then only the Bobcat Enclosure was provided by RAK, so special thanks to them for helping me make this video. As I was like, oh, I would love to have all the miners and all the enclosures so that I can just kind of show it all at once. So those are the before we begin stuff. All right, benefits. Why the heck should you get an enclosure? Well, let's just jump to the video. So I have a RAK enclosure in front of me, and like I said, I'm doing some experiments here, but the main benefit that you're getting, and this kind of gets into the tour, but you're basically eliminating as much loss from the miner to your antenna as possible, as much as possible. Okay, if you have a really long cable run, then you're going to get more loss. So that's what we want to do, is try and get as little loss as possible. That's where you're maximizing your benefits, or your mining potential in your ability to receive signal via the Helium network. So that is the main benefit. So you can get a lot more HNT if you're getting this kind of setup. Now, I would caution you, like for my part, I wanted to, I only had one miner when I started all this journey. So I elected not to put my miner in the enclosure at the beginning because I didn't have any backup miners. If you do have backup miners, by all means, try it out and get one of these enclosures or borrow it. You can even get a temporary enclosure. I'll include the link to a smaller one. It's definitely not one I would recommend long-term, and definitely not one I would recommend during or in like a oceanside setup where there's a lot of rain. So that is the benefits. More mining. So simple as that, right? All right, let's give you a tour so you can get all the parts here. Sometimes people just need to see what it's like and get talked to, and they can talk through this, and then they can figure it out on their own. So right away we have, I'm going to start where you inject the power. So this is going to be a power plug for wherever your locale is. So that's a power. You go into the wall with that, and then this goes to a Poe injector. So on the Poe injector, there are, and I'm going to try and get this perfect, or as best as I can. So you have two ports on here. One is PoE and one is LAN. And the LAN goes back to your router, your switch, whatever you're choosing to disseminate your internet through. But that's what you need, the internet connection. as this is the whole point of the network, is that we're using this connection to send that information back through the internet to whoever's paid for the data to transmit over the Helium network. All right, so then PoE, this is your power. So if I'm looking at cables here, this is this yellow cable is going to go right in here to the miner. It's going to supply both power and Ethernet connection via this cable through here, and then come in the signal here to the splitter. This is called the splitter. So this is the injector, this is the splitter. And then the splitter splits up into two. That's the power that goes in the side of the miner right here, and then the signal, which goes in through the bottom here. Make sense? Hopefully. If not, you can ask questions or just keep watching and figure it out from there. All right, so now we have the miner here. The miner I've affixed, you can't see it right now, but I've used the screws, so this top part can come off, and it actually will improve your wireless connectivity a little bit if you do take that off. You don't have to, but if you want some backup or fallback to your wireless network, then you can have this, take this top off, because it will be sealed anyways. So that's how I mounted it in here. So the screws are similar that you take off here, just on the back side. So you can actually come through. This tray actually has some screw holes in there, and right to the exact dimensions of the miner. So everything, like I can't move this whole thing. It's very tight and in there. Now, one little hot tip is maybe to put some zip ties around here, and then that will zip that in place. Okay. All right, now next you have the antenna signal, which is actually coming off. This is the LoRa going to your antennas. Now what I've done here, and this is a non-standard recommendation. This is me just trying it. I've received tons and tons of comments. Hey, what it would be if you connected two antennas up to this. So this is me trying out. So normally you can just take one of these little cables and go right into your miner, and then do one antenna. I've done many installs like this. It works just fine. So that is not a problem. So again, this is a deviation that I'm choosing to experiment. Recommendation to keep following the channel, and you'll be able to hear if this is like a dope setup or a not so dope setup. All right, so here I just have two of these coming out. Now, one thing is that a second mounting apparatus for this little connector cable is not standard in the RAK enclosure. You would have to order that separately. All right, so then we have the whole enclosure here. We have our Ethernet. This is the, oh gosh, I forget what the official name for it is, but it's basically just a gland. That's what it is, a power over Ethernet gland. So in here you have a couple different parts, and what this does is that you put the Ethernet cable through here. So now you can see that this one may have a problem. So if I go to insert this through here, it won't fit because of the jacket on here. So you're going to need to either clip and crimp your own cable on here, or do some modification of the end of your cable to fit through there. So then it goes through there, and we can just pretend that it does. And then this part is really important as well. So this is just kind of like a weather stripping nut or whatever. So it goes around there and it crimps, and then as this part right here, these little fins, they will clamp down around the outside of this and keep the water from penetrating into your enclosure. So that's why it's called the gland. So then this would fit over the end, and this part is actually a little more flexible. I can get it over this, but you can see that I can't quite get it through in the end here. So really you want almost to crimp your own here, or just do a default connector on here. So any of the bigger ones that you get are not gonna fit through there. All right. And then on the bottom side of this is just a regular standard jack. You just have to figure out which way the notch is, and then insert it into here, and make sure you listen for that click when you get it in here. Make sense? All right. So that is the gland. If I put this back together correctly. All right, on the top side here, and this may involve a lot of clanking here as I get this around to where you can see. So you can see that I've gotten the connectors. Like I said, this one is I actually took from another enclosure box that I was sent. You can buy extra of these at from RAK, from Parley Labs. There's probably another one I'm forgetting as well. But you can see that there's more ports on here. So normally I'm just using the LoRa here. But of course with this experiment, I'm going to experiment with the LoRa too. It doesn't matter which one you experiment with. They're all the same. It just helps you organize yourself. If you're going to, I don't know, if there's miners that will end up doing all of these things, then you'll be able to use those and figure out which one you want to use. But yeah, so that's what I've chosen to do, is just do LoRa and LoRa 2, but by default, I'm usually just using LoRa. Now you can see I have lightning arresters on here. I have not crimped these yet, because I'm still doing some experiments on, and actually it didn't work the first time I mounted it, and we'll get into that later in the video. So with this enclosure, I'm using the 8 dBi as the main antenna on LoRa, and then a 3 dBi, that's this one. If you're looking up in the camera on the corner, then that's the 3 dBi. So the 8 dBi just doesn't really come into view very well. So then on the back side, this is a fairly large mounting plate. You can put in a pole, but it's a very big, and I've had to kind of reinforce this. I haven't yet experimented with turning this around and running it backwards through there. I don't think it would work as well, but my pole that's running through here is a little bit skinnier than this would allow. So I got to figure out how to reinforce that. If you've got comments, throw them in. So there's the tour. You can take all these nuts and bolts and loosen them so that you can basically change the angles at which you're mounting, which is really, really important as you're doing this. So hopefully that gives you a good sense of all the sense of all the parts and where they're located at, and we'll go into more in these details later. So hopefully that gives you the tour enough that you need. The last thing that I will cover is the front plate. So the front plate, and there we go. So you see the fins. The fins are I figured this out because they didn't have instructions that came with this. So when you mount it, you want to mount them going horizontally. So you can say perpendicular to the antennas, because wind at the surface usually goes sideways. So you want to make sure it's going this way and not this way. So your fins should not match your antenna direction. Okay, that's another hot tip. So yeah, you just put that on, you put on all, you can see these holes here are all around, and you just put the screws in there. There are some other things on the bottom side that we can give quick comment to. Sorry, dropped my mouse. All right, so on the bottom side here, you can see that there is that Ethernet connection. See the notch that I was talking about. You have the GPS, which we're not using in this setup. And then I haven't quite figured out what this is for yet. I don't know if it's a drain plug or something. I'm not sure. There is no label for it, so that makes me wonder a little bit. This is the grounding. That's what that little symbol means. That's on the lower part right here. It's just the grounding plug. So usually what I do is I will run the lightning arresters, connect those around the back side. Flip this here. So run it from the lightning arrestor, which is over here. There we go. So crimp that and then run it around to the grounding here and then ground to your mast as well. So that is the full tour of all the sides of this. So that completes the tour. All right, let's do some hot tips here. So if you're looking for just little gotchas or things that this was my list. Basically, after I ran through a half a dozen of these installs, I wanted to figure out or just put my knowledge down so I remembered it for this video, which is actually like, I don't know, 4 months ago I did the half dozen installs. So this is my laundry list of tips. Number one, make sure you always put the enclosure lid on last. So you need to verify all the connectivity. So this one got me the most. And even after a half dozen installs, I still ended up like that this was a problem, that I caught myself. Oh, it's fine. I connected it, I onboarded it, and then I'd fasten all the nuts on there or the screws and then mount it, and then it doesn't work. So that's my fault. So when you do that, you want to leave this front cover off so that you can pair with it, and then also check your lights on both here and also on the miner itself. There should be lights all the time lighting up. So that's number one tip. So keep your lid off. If you need to, just have it at a lower elevation. Don't stick it in its final position unless it's really easy to take this on and off, this front plate on and off really quickly. Because if you lose these screws, it's harder to get replacements. You can get replacements from RAK, but that just sets you back some time. So you definitely don't want to lose those as much as possible. So that's the number one tip that I would share. Number two is ensure that you have appropriate grounding. So I found an Ethernet grounding box on Amazon that I'll share the link to. I know Ubiquiti makes some that are, I think, even a little bit cheaper than what I found on Amazon. That was after the fact, and they seem just as nice. I haven't ordered any yet. I probably will at some point as I work through these installs. But Ethernet grounding just keeps things a little bit more safe. Make sure that you keep all that static electricity out of your system. So that's a good tip there. All right, ensure that Wi-Fi is configured as a fallback in case your Ethernet wiring fails for some reason. So and actually for this install, even though I had Wi-Fi configured, for some reason it would not connect. And so that set me back a little bit as well. So I verified that it did indeed get configured for Wi-Fi, but for some reason I didn't have connectivity. So I don't know if I just need to work on my antenna positioning or something like that. Not this antenna, more so my receiving antenna for my Wi-Fi. So, which I believe the Wi-Fi is like embedded on the next board down here. But yeah, having that as a fallback would be awesome, because if you do this wrong, or in case your Ethernet cable gets crimped, stepped on, cut, whatever, it gets disconnected, then it will fall back and you'll still be mining because of your Wi-Fi. All right. So for wiring, if you're going to crimp your own cables, which I usually do, I would recommend that you use one or the other, but not both. So what do I mean there? So on a cable, there is colors, and I don't know if you can see that very well on here, but each one of these cables inside or wires inside a jack are different colors. And to make this a little bit better, this is a crimping tool that I got off Amazon, and you can see here. Now let me experiment with focus here. Sorry if this is, there we go. All right, so you can see that I have some different colors here, and this crimping tool is just awesome. So it gives you the color coding right there. So you can use A or B, but only use one of them on each end of your cable. So you can choose B's on both sides or A's on both sides, but don't mix. And I found that out from the staff at RAK as I was getting some support, just to make sure that I was doing it correctly, because when I did A's for some reason, or I used A for a reason that B was giving me some weird issues, and I think it was just more so my problem rather than something something in the cord or whatever. I think it was just that I crimped it wrong. So that was the problem there. All right, now let's get the focus back on the enclosure here. All right, so that's why I used the A wiring, but you can use A or B, but not one of each on each end. I was advised that the Poe injector and splitter don't mesh well with gigabit routers or switches, so you may need to replace the injector, or sorry, this is the splitter, the injector, which is this. You may need to replace this and this with a different injector, which I ordered one for a host that was seeming to have this problem, and it helped rectify the issues. So I definitely recommend checking that out. And I'll put the links in there. So actually I'm ordering another one for these because I believe that I'm having these problems as well. So just a hot tip there. So after crimping much of my own Ethernet, I decided that pass-through terminators are the easiest to use. However, if make sure your terminating tool crimps them 100% every time. My brand new crimper that I got, which I just showed you, my brand new one at the time didn't, or it worked very well most of the time. There were a couple times when this thing didn't crimp all the way, or as it was trimming, it has a special trimming attachment here that will trim off those front of those wires. It will trim those off, and it didn't do it right every time, so it didn't allow me to fully insert the Ethernet cable. So what are pass-through connectors? Let me just take this out. So these are the pass-through ones that I got off of Amazon. Sorry, it's a little hard to see. But yeah, I got these. These have a special grounding. They're meant for more outdoor, but they have the metal on the outside. So that's what I use for any outdoor installs. And you can't really see it very well on here. Actually, you can. You can see my finger through that little kind of jagged hole. So that's pass through. So what happens is, as you insert the cable through this end, the wires will come out this end, and then you can verify that they're in the correct order. Now remember that you want to, when you're doing that, always look on the bottom side. So don't have the notch towards you. So when you're looking at these colors that are on the wiring diagram and you're matching that up, you want to look at the bottom side of the jack, not the top side. Oops. This is the top side, this side with the notch. So that should match up. Pin 1 is on the top here of the jack. So where my index finger is, not my thumb. So this side up here is number 1. So then it would match up with whatever the wiring diagram says. Another hot tip. All right, and then for any install, I'd highly recommend getting a mapper or just some sort of LoRaWAN device that you can emit a signal, because that's almost like a backup saying that everything works. It will just emit a signal, and then plus you'll make a little bit of mining rewards from that as well. So I've used the Dragino one. I've used a couple of others. I know of fleet owners that just place a water sensor or another IoT device with every install, just as a, like, always, because it's just one more way of checking up on their installs and making sure that they're working. So that is the tips that I have for y'all. And again, I'll put the links, link to the live stream that I did on part of it as enclosures. I'll put it right at the right part so you can see all the parts that I used and all that kind of stuff. And there's a bunch of links in there. So tools, I already showed you some of the tools that I use, but I definitely recommend a good crimping tool. Here's another one that I've used in the past as well. So this does both six pin and 8-pin crimping. And I actually like this a little bit easier because it's on the other side here. This one, or just really like crimps it full, or not crimp, but cuts it fully. So every single time. So that I really like that. This one does not trim the wires though. Only this one did it. So that's another tool for you all. Now, here's another one that I use for stripping, and I've done this for coax cable as well, but you can put it in there, and then this little loop is actually very utilitarian, so you can take it and spin it around and just kind of pull. While the cable keeps it in place, you can go like this and it will strip off the wiring for you. So that's this little tool right in here, and it has a configurable depth on that to strip the whatever the sheathing is. So nice little handy tool as well. And then it will do the this one does not do crimping, so it's just for cutting and stripping. All right, and then same as this tool, it will do cutting and stripping, and this actually does pretty well. So I tend to use that last one that I showed less than I do this one for stripping. This is just kind of everything in one, and it works pretty decently. All right, then I showed the pass-through connectors. I did get 2 of those. So if I'm using an inside one, or one where like I'm not worried about, you know, grounding or whatnot, then I'm just using a standard connector, and this is still pass-through connectors. But this has no metal on it. It's just the standard network jack that we're all used to here. So those are the 2 different kinds of jacks. This has the metal on the outside for additional help in grounding if the outdoor cord has some grounding in there. And so what you normally find in that as far as cable is concerned, and actually I have one right here, and this is the cable actually that I cut for this enclosure, and you can see that it has the metal on there, and then there's sheathing in here as well that has basically it prevents EMI and also or helps with EMI, and then you can't really see it here probably very well, but there is a little metal wire in there that helps with grounding as well. So this is some outdoor cable, Ethernet cable that I picked up on Amazon. I just like to crimp my own, so get the length I need, exact length every single time. So let's see here. Another tool is just a slide wrench. I don't know what the official name for this is, but this is really great on some of these things, like over here when you're trying to tighten these. You usually can just finger tighten these, but I definitely recommend one of these as an additional tool. I don't have it on me, but I do recommend Teflon tape for when you're attaching to the antenna to the lightning arrestor and the lightning arrestor to the enclosure. Teflon tape is just what they use for plumbing, so it helps make it go on and off easier, and also keeps it sealed so that things don't get in here. You'll also, as part of the install, you'll get this kind of tape, and this stuff goes around the outside of all these connections so that it keeps all the water out. So you'll get this wider one, and also the some electrical tape too. So feel free to use as much of that as you'd like. Other tools that would be very important. So I'm especially on these external screws, I definitely recommend using something that is like this. So if you, I love this. This is a screwdriver that can go basically pop it out and then switch directions, or change from Phillips to a flathead really quickly. I really like this. However, with the tight tolerances on the backside of getting these screws in, especially around like this one here and then this one over here, right beside the antenna, it's really hard to get in through the backside. So having just a straight Phillips screwdriver would really help in those tight areas. So that will help you as well. And then definitely for on the backside here, you'll want some ratchets, or if you're using the slide, whatever, having a socket wrench here that's really long, or also those wrenches that I don't have on hand, but that can slip over the end of this, and then you just hold it still, and then you ratchet from the other side, from this side. And that can help you position all those. And then again, a level would be really important as well, just to, when you finally are mounting the enclosure, getting these things dialed in at the correct elevation to get your antennas as perfectly level as possible. So you want these straight up and down. I literally saw an install picture the other day of somebody that had attached it to their building, but did not, or attached it to some pipe on their roof or whatever, but did not pay any attention to this. And these antennas were literally like at like a 45-degree angle. So that was basically, you want them straight up and down. Okay. He was going off this way. And so then it's sending the signal down into the dirt or really high up into the sky. So you want these straight up and down. Don't ever mount this like sideways like that, such that these antennas they should be pointing towards the sky, like the highest part of the sky, like noonday sun type of sky, or straight up in the air. Otherwise, you're gonna affect your mining. So that's some more tips, even though we're talking about tools. I believe that's it for. Oh wait, no, totally. I totally want to cover these tools. I picked up all these on Amazon as well. So these are network testers. And if you've never used a network tester before, I definitely would recommend you get one, especially if you're doing a lot of these installs. So how you do that is that, so this is the tester portion, and I'm going to stick one into the remote side here, and then the other one into the tester side. Because this is great, because this is a cable I've used all the time. I actually got it from local ISP, I think. And so I trust this cable, but I want to verify it, right? So I just turn on, and there's an auto switch here. My battery might have died. Here, get this tool. Yeah, I believe my battery is dead because it's not advancing. One thing that I will say that I did burn out one of these is that it says not for live circuits. It also means it's not for power over Ethernet. So if you have power over Ethernet, you can damage your your device. And I hope I didn't do that the last time I tested this. It is showing some, but it's really faded. So I'll have to get some new batteries and show you that at another time. But anyways, what it does, I guess I'll just explain it in theory, is that you'll see these little red marks that will go from the left side to the right side, one at a time. It will light up and test each pin. And then also on this device, you'll see the LEDs light up from 1 to 8, go down, and then it'll even do your grounding test as well. So just something to keep in your back pocket before testing these, because it's always good to make sure that your equipment is running really, really well. And it's these things that can cost you hours of diagnostics time, just taking it for granted that, oh, it works, and then it doesn't. It actually doesn't when you test it. So that is a network cable tester. And then this thing is a power over Ethernet tester. And I will go ahead and plug this in so that you all can see this. Okay, so I'm testing the power over Ethernet, and I've plugged it into the wall. So I'm just plugging this on the side, and you can see that it's lighting up. It says U47.5 A P U47.5, and then it just rotates through those. So this can say that, like, basically what you want to do is before, so you want to, like, I'm using like the short yellow cable right now, but if you were to use the really long cable that you're intending to plug into this, it should read the same number when it's short like this as when it is long, when you're using the long cable. All the readings should read the same. So another handy device that can help you test your setups. All right. Next. Parts. All right, so I'm going to move this enclosure out of the way. And I'm going to show you the box that it comes in. So this is super messy, but there's some method to the madness. So what this is more than likely this is your mounting plate. This is what you would screw and this is the Bobcat enclosure, so this is what you would screw the Bobcat enclosure to. So those screw holes are probably done specifically for the Bobcat. And then I use metal because it dissipates heat really nicely as well. The one thing I've heard about a lot of these miners is they generate a lot of heat. A lot of people are really concerned about the cold temperatures, but cold temperatures are actually the lesser of the worries. Hot temperatures is more what you want to be concerned about. So, yeah. So there's a lot of padding in here that's necessary for shipping, but obviously not necessary for us right now. And there's some boxes in here. You can see that, oh, this is the power part for the injector. And I haven't even opened up this RAK one before. So this is the mounting apparatus that is for the back side of the enclosure. So this looks very different from the RAK enclosure, but does the same things. And then also you'll see on the side there's these little cutouts here, and that's actually for the solar shield. So another thing that helps eliminate as much sun as possible. So that's the back side, and there's lots of screws in here and nuts, and there's even something on here that says up. So there's a direction on there that says, hey, this is how you mount it. Because if you're like me, I need those directions or that help whenever I can. Those cutouts actually might not be for the solar shield, but actually for the pivoting thing that helps you level. As I'm thinking about it here on the fly. Like I said, I've never seen this RAK enclosure before, so it's a little bit different than what I'm used to. This is the plugs at the bottom for, like, it says like GPS and stuff. You want to make sure that these little, like, kind of light plastic colored parts and the little black O-rings here, these O-rings are for keeping out moisture. So you always want to make sure that those are on the outside of the enclosure. So the O-ring, of course, is right where it needs to be. But if you were experimenting with, oh, where does that go? So this white screw here, this little clearer O-ring would go over the top of this white bolt. And then that would be on the outside, and then on the inside, this little white nut that's floating around would go on the inside of the enclosure. And then it would keep that O-ring in place and then keep out the moisture. And then there's a zip tie in here as well, usually for the splitter, not the injector, the splitter. Okay, so that takes care of that part. Now this is a little bit beefier than the parts that I showed you on earlier in the video on the RAK enclosure. So this is a bit heavier gauge cable, and then this is the mounting apparatus to the Bobcat enclosure. Like I said, a little bit different than what we've seen with the past parts. Can you mix and match? Yes, because the Bobcats all are RP SMA, so everything would match. So it's not like it's a big deal. Okay, more tour of parts. This is the Ethernet gland, and then yeah, there's some stuff even in here that I haven't seen before. So interesting. I have to figure out where that is. Here's the splitter. One thing that I did not say, that I should have said earlier, is that these splitters more than likely are not going to work well with gigabit routers. I think I did say that, but I really want to recommend that you check out that, or put that as suspect if you're getting yours direct from RAK. Make sure that it works, because this actually says on here 10100. So if it does gigabit, then you may experience some connectivity issues. All right, there are two bags of screws here. Now there are these smaller, so and this is just from experience, there's the bag of bigger screws that, I don't know, are about a ½ inch long. Those are for the front plate on the enclosure, so as it screws in. And then these smaller screws are your mounting brackets for what you mount your the metal plate that I showed at the beginning. That would mount to your enclosure. That's this thing right here. So these small screws would mount via these two, and basically, I think it would actually be in the corners. So you would sink all those screws into the enclosure, or yes, into the enclosure, and then these would be for the Bobcat. Now this other screw in here, so all these are the same size in here, except this one over on the left. That one on the left is for your grounding. So this is the only weird one. All of the ones in this bag are the exact same size. So that's your how to decipher. I know the first time I opened this, I was very overwhelmed with like, what are these screws? How do I tell them apart? What do they do? So trial and error, folks. And then inside there's just some more tape. So that's in one of the boxes. Now the Bobcat enclosure, I haven't figured out exactly why it's a different material. It does seem a little bit bigger. Go ahead and move this box so that we can just look at the enclosure. So there are not as many labels on here. This looks to be the bottom side. Why the bottom? Because I look and see the grounding here right away, and that's the grounding symbol right there. And so I know that the grounding goes there because you're always grounding to the bottom. So this would be the bottom side of the enclosure. That's why it didn't open. So the screws, there are screws on the back here that that keep everything in place. So we actually can't look at it just yet. So on the top, you see again, LoRa 1, LoRa 2. LoRa 1, LoRa 2. So maybe that's a hint that we should be using more than one antenna. I don't know. Well, like I said, I'll share those results. Let me grab a screwdriver here. And it looks like on this one, it's a lot easier to use. So I can use my the one screwdriver that I like a little bit more. This is just so handy. Be in these tight spots and you only have to take one tool up with you. I don't believe that these are the end screws that we're going to use, so but as always, set those aside. Okay, so interesting. So this is plastic, but you can see that there's a gasket around here to keep out water, and then that attaches to or meets with this, keeps all the water out. And then on the inside, you can see that there's just not much there other than room to place it. Place the miner. So if I'm looking at assembling this here, I'm going to look at some So this is where I get to learn on the fly with you all. And I'm sure that if you're watching this, you're like, it goes that way, dummy. Yeah. So it's just trial and error of figuring out where it goes. Just put it in and see what happens here. So it doesn't quite fit that way. So I'm going to try this way. Okay. That is a little bit better. But you can see that I've got two holes that aren't matching up. So I'm going to turn it around this way. And again, it doesn't match up very well. This is why I probably should rehearse this before I film this video. Not quite. Again. Well, I'm not going to belabor this point, but maybe I'll give the correct orientation when I give out this final, like when I post in my comments on the pinned comment, I will just reference where these two are in relation to the grounding. So this is the grounding side right here. So I'll give the notches are supposed to be, you know, I'll just say it like that. Oh, look, hey, ha, look at that. That's the correct orientation. So you want these notches at the routing or at the grounding site. And you can see how this little lip in here goes right in between these two metal posts that are very close together. So that is the correct installation for this. And then you would put on your Bobcat. So see, these two screw holes are probably to go through here. So you want to take off your mounting plate and then put it right there and then screw on accordingly. And then you'd be able to, I'm going to put that back on. We're just going to say I did that. And then it's going to go in there just like that. Now, actually, now is a good point. You actually wouldn't probably want Bobcat to be reading the same way as on the bottom with your grounding, because that's going to make, because all your connections are going to be at the back here. And so this is a really tight fit in here, whereas there's more room on here. So you probably want to have the Bobcat technically upside down. And then that makes this easier to reach. Now, as always, like I could send this video to even the Bobcat people and they could be like, that's totally wrong. So again, check the pinned comments, as that will be the official thing. I'm going to send this out and have them review it. And then anything that they correct me on, I'm going to throw into that pinned comment. So, but yeah, that's what you do for the enclosure. And then put on that lid. kind of fix it to there. And then these are the arms that you'll want to put. Now, they do advise that you have this solar shield with the Bobcat because they're more susceptible to heat. Now, I'm going to give you an example of why you might be concerned about the heat. Not just for the Bobcat enclosure and the Bobcat specifically, because we already know that these are a little bit more susceptible to temperature. But I had an accident with my Nebra, but it was kind of a fortunate accident. It still works, but I just, this cover I learned comes off very easily. And I wanted to show this for this very reason. I say it comes off. I'm not going to throw it down again. Switch here. There we go. So this is what I'm wanting to show you all. And I hope that comes, actually I'm going to try and focus it in a little bit more here. So you can see that this heatsink right here is kind of wonky. It's turned a little bit counterclockwise. So what had happened is I had it mounted vertically. And when you have it mounted vertically, this chip was heating up a lot and then causing this heatsink to slide down. And so you can even see that not only is it moving downward, but it's also, it's moving downward and it's twisting. So that goes against what this thing is intended for, heat dissipation. And if you remember your original Xbox, 360 now, that was caused by a similar problem in that this heatsink, or a heatsink, when it heated up, it would move. And actually, I think it was a chip. Now that I think about it, the chip would actually heat up, and the board would get so hot that then the chip would move off the board, or just get separated from the board entirely via the hot-cool cycles. And so what this heatsink did, it was actually like off. I think it was just, if I pull at this one enough, like it was down here. It had migrated all the way down here. And so I was like, whoa, that's a problem. So when you just think about that for mounting and for heat dissipation, this is really important to be concerned about, is because you don't know what's happening when the cover's on. You just kind of want to see what's inside and what's going on in here as well. So having that solar shield on your RAK enclosure would be really, really important. And we are almost at an hour on this video, and I don't want to belabor the point with assembly. I hope I've gotten everything that, all the questions that you would have asked along the way. I guess there's one more. The Nebra would fit in there. Let me just verify that the lid fits as well. I believe they had a video showing that the Nebra enclosure, or Nebra, did go in here. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a solid fit. The Freedom Fi is about the same size as the Nebra, maybe a little bit smaller. I do know that the Freedom Fi gets really, really hot, so I would probably recommend it be in this enclosure anyways. I don't think it would even fit in the RAK enclosure. So if you have a Freedom Fi unit, I definitely recommend this one. I think the Sense Cap also fits in the Bobcat enclosure as well. So once again, if I'm wrong, check for the pinned comment. It's always worth your time and money, because I'm not liable for broken miners or installs. I even had somebody say that they fell off their roof because of my recommendations. Dude, that's your own liability. I'm sorry if you actually fell off. I'll actually, at some point, I'll do a video on safety gear that I liked for installing these RAK enclosures on a big tower that I installed. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. By all means, fire away on any questions. And thank you again to the people at RAK for providing the Bobcat enclosure. That's going to be an awesome install to experiment with and get some full implementations and just trying out of many things. As always, like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate also, I appreciate your referrals. If you click on those referral links, those help pay me back kind of for this time that I spent in the learning that I've done to make your job easier and help you earn all that sweet HNT. So until next time, Carpe Tempestus, everyone.